Commander Vex Thor adjusted his 4 eyes to focus on the holographic display, watching 12 cadets from various species prepare for what was supposed to be a routine survival exercise. The Galactic Military Academy's training program had been running these simulations for over 3 centuries, and honestly, it had become rather predictable. Drop the cadets on a hostile planet, give them basic survival gear, watch them fumble around for a few hours, then extract them with a slightly bruised ego and a passing grade. But today was going to be different, and Vex Thor couldn't help but let his mandibles click in amusement. "Sir," Lieutenant Kilra approached, her tentacles writhing nervously. "The transport is ready. All cadets are equipped with standard survival packs, emergency beacons, and—" "Remove them," Vex Thor interrupted, not taking his eyes off the display. "Sir?" "You heard me, Lieutenant. Remove all equipment. Every tool, every beacon, every convenient little gadget they've grown accustomed to." His voice carried the weight of someone who had seen too many cadets graduate without truly understanding what survival meant. Kilra's skin shifted to a concerned purple hue. "Commander, with respect, that would be highly irregular. Academy protocol clearly states, Academy protocol has produced soft soldiers who panic the moment their fancy equipment fails," Vex Thor growled. "Strip them down to their basic uniforms. Let's see what these future officers are really made of." And so, 12 very confused cadets found themselves standing on the surface of Kepler 442b, a planet that looked deceptively pleasant with its rolling hills, dense forests, and 2 cheerful suns hanging in the sky. What the initial scans hadn't mentioned were the nocturnal predators, the poisonous vegetation that looked remarkably similar to edible plants, and the fact that temperatures dropped to near freezing once those cheerful suns decided to take their evening break. Cadet Zara Okafor from the Centauri colonies looked around with growing alarm. "Where's my survival pack? Mine's missing too." Mine's missing too," squeaked Pip, a small Regelian whose species was known more for their mathematical prowess than their wilderness skills. Thorek, a massive Korvaxi warrior caste, simply grunted and began examining the landscape with calculating eyes. His species had conquered 17 star systems through sheer determination and strategic thinking, but even he looked slightly perplexed by the absence of equipment. "This has to be a mistake," muttered Yuki Tanaka, the human cadet, while crouching down to examine some tracks in the soft soil. "They wouldn't just abandon us here without gear." "Oh, but they would," came a voice from above. The cadets looked up to see their instructor's transport, hovering at a safe distance. "Welcome to Advanced Survival Training, version 2.0. You have 72 hours to establish shelter, find food, and signal for extraction. Good luck." The transport disappeared with a cheerful hum, leaving behind 12 cadets and a whole lot of awkward silence. Zara threw her hands up in exasperation. "This is insane. How are we supposed to survive without equipment? I'm an engineering student, not a primitive hunter-gatherer." "Speak for yourself," Thorek rumbled, already breaking off sturdy-looking branches. "Korvaxi children learn basic survival before they can properly speak." "Easy for you to say," chittered Scrix, an insectoid from the hive worlds. "Your species didn't evolve in climate-controlled biodomes." While the others continued their impromptu panic session, Yuki had wandered off and was now collecting various items. Long grass, thin branches, strips of bark. The human worked with an odd sort of calm that made the others gradually stop their complaints and watch. "What are you doing?" Pip asked, his large eyes blinking rapidly with curiosity. "Making rope," Yuki replied without looking up, demonstrating how to twist plant fibers together. "See, you take 3 strands, braid them like this, and—" The human's hands moved with practiced efficiency, creating several feet of surprisingly strong cordage. Zara stared. "You can make rope? From grass?" "From lots of things, actually. Bark, plant fibers, even animal sinew if you can get it. Humans have been making rope for about 40,000 years, give or take a few millennia." 40,000? Scrix's compound eyes widened. "Your species was making complex tools when mine was still trying to figure out agriculture." Yuki shrugged. "We had to. Earth wasn't exactly a gentle nursery world. No offense, but most of your species developed on planets that were relatively safe. Earth actively tried to kill us on a regular basis. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, predators with really big teeth. You learn to be creative or you become extinct. The human had finished several lengths of rope and was now fashioning what looked suspiciously like a primitive spear from a straight branch and a sharpened stone. How did you know to sharpen the stone like that? Thoric asked, genuine respect creeping into his voice. Napping. You strike the stone at the right angle to create flakes, shape the edge, Yuki demonstrated, sending chips of rock flying with controlled strikes. Humans were making stone tools for over 2 million years. This is basically muscle memory at this point. 2 million years? Pip's voice cracked. My species has only been sapient for 50,000. Different evolutionary pressures, Yuki explained while testing the spear's balance. Earth kept throwing challenges at us. Predators, climate changes, competition with other hominid species, natural disasters. We had to adapt or die. Those who survived passed down their knowledge. As the afternoon progressed, the other cadets found themselves gravitating toward Yuki's growing collection of improvised tools. The human had constructed a basic lean-to shelter using branches, rope, and large leaves, started a fire using friction and dry tinder, and had even set up several small snares along what appeared to be animal trails. Fire, breathed Yuki Sato, a Martian-born cadet. You actually made fire without any equipment. Bow drill method, Yuki explained, still rotating the wooden spindle against the fireboard. Takes practice, but once you get the technique down, it's pretty reliable. The key is having the right tinder. See this dry moss? Perfect for catching sparks. Smoke began to curl up from the tinder bundle, and with careful blowing, Yuki coaxed it into actual flames. The other cadets watched in fascination as the human fed the small fire with gradually larger sticks until they had a proper campfire going. I don't understand, Zara said, settling closer to the warmth. How do you know all this? This isn't part of standard academy curriculum. Yuki poked at the fire with a stick. It's not academy curriculum because most species didn't need to learn this stuff. Your planets were stable, your evolution was relatively smooth. But humans, we spent most of our development in survival mode. Every generation had to pass down practical knowledge or their descendants would die. You're saying your entire species carries around primitive survival knowledge? Thoric asked. Not consciously. But it's there. Buried in our cultural memory, our instincts, our childhood games and stories. Ever wonder why human children like to build forts out of furniture? Or why we find campfires so comforting? It's genetic programming from hundreds of thousands of years of needing shelter and fire to survive. As the first sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, the temperature started dropping noticeably. The other cadets huddled closer to the fire while Yuki worked on expanding the shelter. This is actually kind of cozy, Pip admitted, warming his small hands near the flames. Don't get too comfortable, Yuki warned, securing another branch to the shelter frame. Temperature's going to drop significantly once both suns set, and we're going to have company. Company? Scrix's antennae twitched nervously. Those tracks I found earlier? Fresh and big. Something's been using this area as a hunting ground. We need to be ready. As if summoned by the human's words, a low growling sound echoed from the forest around them. Then another, from a different direction. The cadets instinctively moved closer together, but Yuki remained calm, adding more wood to the fire and checking the improvised spears. There. Yuki pointed to a pair of glowing eyes reflecting the firelight from the edge of their camp. Local predator. Probably been watching us for the last hour. What do we do? Zara whispered, her engineering confidence completely evaporated. We show it that we're not prey, Yuki replied, picking up the longest spear and standing at the edge of their firelight. Fire, tools, coordination. The three things that separated humans from everything else that wanted to eat us. The creature stepped into the light, revealing something that looked like a cross between a wolf and a bear, with too many teeth and claws that could probably open a starship hull. Its eyes fixed on the group of cadets with the kind of calculating intelligence that suggested it had dealt with tool-using prey before. Oh good, Yuki muttered, raising the spear. It's smart. I love it when the apex predators are smart. The beast circled their camp, testing their defenses, looking for weakness. The other cadets gripped their improvised weapons with varying degrees of confidence, but Yuki moved with the casual competence of someone whose ancestors had been doing this exact thing for millennia. Easy, the human whispered. Don't run. Don't show fear. We're bigger than it is. When we're grouped together, we have fire. We have weapons. In its brain, that makes us the dangerous ones. The predator seemed to reach the same conclusion. After several tense minutes of circling and growling, it melted back into the forest, leaving behind only the fading echo of its footsteps. Is it gone? Pip asked in a tiny voice. For now. It'll be back, probably with friends. They're testing us, seeing if we're easy prey or if we're trouble. Yuki settled back down but kept the spear within easy reach. This is why humans never really stopped being tribal. On Earth, the group that worked together survived. The group that didn't became something else's dinner. Your planet sounds terrifying, Scrix observed. It was. Still is, in some places. But that's what made us who we are. Every challenge we faced, we found a way to overcome it. Ice Age, we learned to make clothes and control fire. Predators, we made better weapons and hunting strategies. Food scarcity, we developed agriculture. Natural disasters, we built better shelters and early warning systems. Thoric nodded slowly. Your species turned adversity into advancement. Pretty much. And the thing is, we never really stopped. Even after we reached the stars, we kept that survival mentality. Always looking for the next challenge, the next problem to solve. It's probably why humans volunteer for the most dangerous assignments in the galaxy. Speaking of dangerous, Zara said, pointing toward the forest, I think your friend brought backup. Multiple pairs of eyes were now visible in the darkness, forming a loose circle around their camp. The growling had returned, but lower now, more coordinated. Pack behavior. Yuki stood again, but this time gestured for the others to do the same. All right, everyone up. Grab your spears. Form a circle around the fire. Thoric, you and I take point, since we're the biggest. Everyone else watch each other's backs. Are we really going to fight them? Pip squeaked. Only if we have to. Most predators are smart enough to avoid a fight they might not win. But if they're hungry enough, or if we look weak enough, Yuki shrugged. Then we remind them why humans became the apex predator on a planet full of things with bigger teeth and claws than us. The pack began to close in, and the cadets could see them clearly now. 6 of the wolf-bear creatures, moving with practiced coordination. They had done this before. Steady, Yuki called out, voice calm despite the circumstances. Remember, they want easy prey. We're going to show them that we're anything but easy. The lead predator broke into a charge, followed immediately by 2 others from different angles. Classic pack tactics, designed to overwhelm and confuse prey. But these weren't confused prey animals. These were cadets trained in military tactics, led by a human whose species had been dealing with this exact scenario since before recorded history. Now, Yuki shouted, and the group moved as one. The human's spear took the lead predator in the shoulder, deflecting its charge into the fire where burning logs scattered in all directions. Thoric's massive strength drove his improvised weapon deep into the flank of the second attacker, while the others formed a defensive line with their backs to the flames. The third predator managed to break through their perimeter, but found itself facing Zara who, despite being an engineering student, had apparently taken her combat training seriously. Her spear wasn't perfectly aimed, but it was enthusiastic enough to convince the beast that maybe easier prey could be found elsewhere. The pack regrouped, now missing one member who had collected several burning branches to the face and decided that dinner wasn't worth permanent scarring. The remaining 5 circled again, but with considerably less confidence. That's right, Yuki called out, brandishing the bloodied spear. We're not herbivores. We're the species that looked at everything trying to kill us and decided to kill it right back. Whether the predators understood the words or just the tone, they seemed to get the message. After a few more half-hearted feints, they faded back into the forest, leaving the cadets standing around their scattered fire, adrenaline pumping and grins spreading across their faces. Did we just win? Pip asked, hardly believing it. We survived, Yuki corrected, already working to rebuild their fire. Same thing our ancestors did every night for hundreds of thousands of years. Welcome to being human, everyone. As they settled back around their rebuilt campfire, the other cadets looked at their human companion with new respect. The sarcastic, laid-back student they had known in classes had revealed depths of competence that came from genetic memory spanning millennia. So, Thoric said finally, Tomorrow we need to find water and figure out food sources. Already handled, Yuki replied, pointing toward a series of small traps placed along animal paths. Those snares should catch us some protein by morning, and I spotted a stream about half a kilometer north during my scouting. Water's not a problem. You scouted? Zara asked. When? While you were all arguing about the missing equipment. First rule of survival: assess your resources and threats immediately. Everything else is secondary. The human leaned back against a tree, apparently unconcerned about the fact that they were stranded on an alien planet with no equipment, surrounded by predators, and facing 2 more days of survival challenges. You know what the funny thing is? Yuki said, staring up at the alien stars. This isn't even close to the worst situation humans have survived. We've been through ice ages, volcanic winters, plague outbreaks, asteroid impacts. This is just Tuesday for our species. Tuesday? Scrix asked. Human expression. Means routine, ordinary, nothing special. The human smile was visible in the firelight. Give us a few more days, and we'll probably have this place running like a resort. As the night deepened and the cadets took turns on watch, Commander Vex Thor observed from his orbiting ship, his mandibles clicking in what might have been approval. The exercise was proceeding exactly as he had hoped, though perhaps with more excitement than originally planned. Sir, Lieutenant Kilraw reported, the Predator pack has retreated beyond sensor range. Shall we intervene? Negative. They handled it themselves, and rather impressively, I might add. Vex Thor studied the thermal readings from the camp below. That human cadet. What's in their psychological profile? Standard ratings across all metrics. Above average in problem solving and spatial reasoning, but nothing exceptional. Nothing exceptional, Vex Thor mused. And yet they've just demonstrated survival skills that most of our officers couldn't match with a full equipment loadout. Should we note this in their file? Note it, Lieutenant. I want a full analysis of human survival capabilities incorporated into academy training protocols. If one human cadet can do this much with nothing but primitive tools, imagine what a squad of them could accomplish. Back on the planet's surface, the cadets were settling into their first night of genuine survival. The fire crackled warmly, their improvised shelter provided adequate protection from the cooling air, and the immediate threat of becoming something's midnight snack had passed. So, Pip said quietly, what other impossible things can humans do that the rest of us should know about? Yuki's chuckle was barely audible over the crackling flames. Oh, we're just getting started. Wait until tomorrow when I show you how to make soap from ash and animal fat. Soap? Several voices asked in unison. Hygiene is survival too, the human replied. Clean wounds heal better. Clean water prevents disease. Clean tools work more efficiently. Everything's connected in the survival equation. As the alien constellations wheeled overhead and the cadets took their turns at watch, none of them could have predicted that this single training exercise would eventually become the foundation for an entirely new approach to military survival training, one that would spread throughout the Galactic Military Academy and eventually become known as the human method. But that was still ahead of them. Tonight, they were just 12 cadets around a fire, learning that sometimes the most primitive solutions were also the most effective ones. And somewhere in the darkness beyond their firelight, a pack of very confused predators was having a serious discussion about finding a different hunting ground. One that didn't contain humans. Dawn broke with the sound of Pip shrieking at the top of his small lungs. There's something in the trap. There's something in the trap and it's still moving. Yuki rolled out of the makeshift shelter with the casual grace of someone accustomed to emergency wake-up calls, while the other cadets stumbled around in various states of morning confusion. The human walked over to where Pip was pointing frantically at one of the snares, which contained a rabbit-like creature about the size of a small dog. Breakfast, Yuki announced cheerfully, dispatching the animal with quick efficiency. Who's hungry? You're going to eat that? Zara asked, her face turning slightly green. Unless you prefer to starve, yes. The human was already skinning the creature with a sharp stone. Protein, fat, calories, everything we need to maintain our energy levels. Scrix's compound eyes focused on the process with fascination rather than disgust. Your species consumes other life forms directly, without processing or purification. How do you think meat gets to your processing plants? Yuki asked with amusement. Someone has to catch it first. Humans just skip the middleman for most of our evolutionary history. While preparing their breakfast, the human also demonstrated the promised soap-making process, mixing wood ash with rendered fat to create a crude but effective cleaning agent. The lye in the ash combines with the fats to create saponification, Yuki explained, working the mixture with practiced hands. Chemistry's the same whether you're in a lab or around a campfire. Thoric watched the process with growing respect. Your species developed chemical knowledge through survival necessity, trial and error over thousands of generations. Someone noticed that certain combinations of materials had useful properties. Those who paid attention lived longer and had more offspring. Eventually, it became cultural knowledge. After their morning meal, which proved surprisingly palatable once seasoned with various herbs Yuki had identified as safe, the human led them toward the stream for water collection and further education in practical survival. Water purification without equipment, Yuki announced, constructing what appeared to be a simple filtration system using sand, charcoal, and cloth. Boiling kills biological contaminants, but filtering removes particulates and some chemical impurities. Where did you learn all this? Asked Maya Patel, a quiet cadet from the vegan colonies who had barely spoken since their arrival. Summer camps, scout programs, wilderness education courses. Most human children are exposed to basic survival skills as recreational activities. We call it fun. Yuki's grin was slightly predatory. Turns out our idea of entertainment is everyone else's nightmare scenario. As they worked on improving their camp and gathering resources, the sound of approaching aircraft made them all look up hopefully. But instead of their extraction transport, they saw a different kind of vessel descending, bearing the markings of the Academy's Emergency Medical Division. Commander Vex Thor's voice crackled through a portable communicator that dropped from the medical ship. Cadets, we have a situation. Another training group has activated their emergency beacons approximately 15 kilometers from your location. They're reporting casualties and requesting immediate extraction. The cadets exchanged glances. This wasn't part of their original exercise. We need volunteers for a rescue mission. Vex Thor continued. The terrain between your locations is difficult, and our large transports can't navigate it safely. We can provide you with basic medical supplies, but the actual rescue would need to be accomplished on foot. We'll do it, Yuki said immediately, already gathering their improvised equipment. Wait, Zara protested. We're survival trainees, not rescue specialists. Survival training isn't just about keeping yourself alive, the human replied, fashioning a rough backpack from woven grass and animal hide. It's about helping others survive too. That's what separates civilization from barbarism. The medical supplies were airdropped along with coordinates to the stranded group. As the medical ship departed, the 12 cadets found themselves facing a new challenge. A forced march through unknown terrain while carrying emergency supplies. 15 kilometers through forest and hills, Thoric mused, studying the crude map they'd been provided. With injured personnel at the destination. 2 problems, Yuki said, already organizing the supplies into manageable loads. Getting there, and getting everyone back. We'll need to construct stretchers for the injured, establish a supply route for the return trip, and do it all before dark. Supply route? Pip asked. You don't carry everything at once when you're moving casualties over difficult terrain. You establish supply caches along the route, stage resources, create waypoints. Standard logistics, just without vehicles or technology. As they set out through the forest, Yuki took the lead, reading the terrain with an instinctive understanding that impressed even Thorek. The human identified the easiest paths, marked dangerous areas, and somehow managed to maintain a steady pace that challenged but didn't exhaust the group. How do you know which way to go? Maya asked during their first rest break. Topographical awareness. You read the land like a book. Water flows downhill, so streams show you the elevation changes. Vegetation patterns tell you about soil conditions and drainage. Animal trails usually follow the most efficient routes between resources. Your species developed all this just from walking around? Scrix asked. Walking, running, hunting, migrating. Humans were nomadic for most of our existence. We had to be able to navigate unfamiliar territory quickly and efficiently, or we'd starve, get lost, or walk into something that wanted to eat us. 3 hours into their march, They encountered their first major obstacle, a steep ravine with a rapidly flowing stream at the bottom. The designated route would have required a significant detour, adding hours to their journey. Bridge, Yuki announced, already examining the available materials. Bridge? Several voices asked in unison. Simple suspension bridge. We've got rope, we've got strong branches, we've got rocks for anchors. The human was already directing the others in gathering materials. Humans have been building bridges for over 4,000 years. This is just a scaled-down version. What followed was an impressive display of engineering improvisation. Using their handmade rope, sturdy branches, and careful positioning of anchor points, they constructed a narrow but functional bridge across the ravine. I can't believe that actually works, Zara muttered as she carefully crossed the swaying structure. Engineering principles don't change just because you're using primitive materials, Yuki replied. Tension, compression, load distribution. Same physics whether you're building with steel or sticks. The rescue site, when they finally reached it, was a sobering reminder of how quickly survival situations could deteriorate. 8 cadets from various species, 3 of them injured, huddled around the smoking remains of what had been an inadequate shelter. Their emergency equipment had malfunctioned, their food supplies were contaminated, and they had been sitting in place for nearly 18 hours waiting for rescue. Thank the stars, gasped Cadet Jiren, a Altarian whose normally blue skin had turned pale with stress. We thought no one was coming. Everyone's coming home, Yuki said firmly, already assessing the injuries while the others distributed food and water. But first we need to stabilize the wounded and prepare for the return journey. The humans' medical knowledge proved as practical as everything else. Field dressings made from clean cloth and medicinal plants, improvised splints fashioned from straight branches and rope, pain management using natural compounds identified through careful observation of local flora. Where did humans learn field medicine? Asked Dr. Kess, the injured group's medical officer, as Yuki expertly set his broken arm. Battlefield surgery, frontier medicine, emergency response. When you can't get to a hospital, you learn to be the hospital. Humans have been practicing trauma medicine for as long as we've been getting traumatized. The return journey required careful planning and resource management. 3 stretchers constructed from poles and fabric, supply caches established at key points along the route, and a rotation system that allowed the rescue team to maintain their pace without exhausting themselves. This is incredible, Commander Vex Thor observed from his orbital position. They've turned a training exercise into a full-scale rescue operation using nothing but improvised equipment and practical knowledge. The human cadet seems to be driving the entire operation, Lieutenant Kilraw noted. The others are following their lead without question. Natural authority based on demonstrated competence. Vex Thor mused. That's rare in our officer candidates. Usually it takes years of training to develop that kind of leadership presence. Back on the surface, the combined group was making steady progress despite the challenges. Yuki had organized them into an efficient unit. Scouts to mark the route ahead, stretcher teams to carry the injured, supply carriers to manage resources, and guards to watch for potential threats. You're like a completely different person, Maya observed as they paused for a rest break. In class, you're just another cadet. Out here, you're in my element, Yuki finished with a grin. Humans are problem solvers by nature. Give us a challenge, and we'll find 17 different ways to overcome it. Then we'll improve on all of them and teach the techniques to anyone willing to learn. As they approached their original campsite, now expanded into what looked like a proper base of operations, the rescued cadets stared in amazement at the improvements that had been made to basic survival conditions. You built all this in 2 days? Dren asked, looking at the expanded shelters, organized tool cache, and efficient cooking area. Humans are builders, Thoric explained with newfound appreciation. It's not enough for them to survive. They have to improve, optimize, innovate. Speaking of innovation, Yuki said, pulling out what appeared to be a primitive but functional musical instrument, fashioned from hollow reeds and stretched sinew. Anyone interested in some entertainment while we wait for extraction? The music that emerged was surprisingly melodic, and within minutes, several of the cadets were singing along to familiar Galactic standard songs adapted to the humans' improvised accompaniment. You made a musical instrument? Pip asked in wonder. Humans make music out of everything. Rocks, sticks, Stretched animal skins, hollow gourds. It's another survival tool, actually. Music builds group cohesion, maintains morale, helps with memory retention for important information. Everything's connected to survival for your species, isn't it? Scrix observed. Pretty much. Art, music, storytelling, games, technology, social structures. It all traces back to the basic need to survive and help others survive. We just got really creative about it over the millennia. When the extraction transports finally arrived the next morning, they found 20 cadets organized into an efficient community with established leadership, resource management, and even entertainment programming. The crash site had been transformed into what looked suspiciously like the beginnings of a permanent settlement. Remarkable, Commander Vex Thor said as he surveyed the operation. Cadet Okafor, your performance during this exercise has been exceptional. Thank you, sir, but it wasn't just me. Everyone contributed once they understood what needed to be done. Nevertheless, your leadership and practical knowledge made the difference between success and potential disaster. The commander's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. I'm recommending you for advanced leadership training and a position in our new wilderness operations program. New program, sir? Something we're developing based on observations from this exercise. It seems that traditional survival training has been inadequate for preparing our officers for real-world challenges. As the transports lifted off, carrying the cadets back to the academy, Yuki looked down at the campsite they were leaving behind. The shelters would decay, the tools would be reclaimed by nature, but the knowledge and experience gained would last a lifetime. So, Zara said, settling into the transport seat next to the human, what other impossible things can your species do that the rest of the galaxy should know about? Yuki's smile was mysterious. Oh, we're just getting started. Wait until you see what humans can accomplish when we actually have proper tools and technology to work with. That sounds ominous, Thorek rumbled with what might have been amusement. Not ominous, the human corrected. Promising. Humans don't just survive, we thrive. And we make sure everyone around us thrives too. That's what makes us dangerous to our enemies and invaluable to our friends. Commander Vex Thor, listening to the conversation from his command chair, made a note in his personal log. Recommendation: immediately expand human recruitment for Galactic Military Academy. Their practical knowledge and leadership capabilities under stress conditions are unmatched by any other species in our database. 6 months later, the Wilderness Operations Program had become the most sought-after specialty training in the Academy, with a waiting list that stretched for years. The program was taught jointly by human instructors and volunteer cadets who had survived the original exercise, and its graduates were quickly becoming the most requested officers for deep space exploration, colony establishment, and emergency response missions. The legend of the cadets who were abandoned without gear and turned it into a masterclass in survival had spread throughout the galactic military community, inspiring a new generation of officers who understood that the most sophisticated technology was useless without the fundamental knowledge of how to survive when everything else failed. And somewhere in the Academy archives, a simple note was filed under Human Capabilities Assessment. Recommend immediate integration of human survival methodologies into standard officer training. Results: extraordinary. The galaxy, it turned out, had a lot to learn from a species that had spent millennia turning adversity into advancement, and the humans were eager to teach.